Welcome to the Metanoia Discourse. I'm your host Sim, and this podcast is all about the way of change in someone's life. And today I'll be joined by Bård Inge, who I have a long-standing relationship with. He was a Krav Maga instructor. That's how we met, and we realized along the way when he was training in Oslo, because he's not from Oslo, that we have a lot of the same type of experiences and that we use a lot of the same type of tools to be better or to get better, to feel better. And these are tools that we then ourselves have used to change our way of life. So he's gonna, in this episode, go in pretty deep on breathing, which is what he spends a lot more time on delving into. And he's one of the very few people that I know that has gone the distance to try different breathing modalities or like different methods and really delved into that. So he's got a lot of knowledge, and that really shown in this episode, and I'm really excited to have had him on. In a relationship to the whole metanoia concept, as in changing your way of life, I have the Metanoia Holistic Health Program that you can find in a link in the description below, which is everything that's fundamental about health collected in a single program. So there we go. Let's get into the episode with Bård Inge. Today I'm joined with Bård Inge. Like, he's a good friend of mine. We are both Krav Maga instructors, and he's gone through his own journey. He's working or he's building a coaching service on the side now from his regular job that's gonna take people into the stuff that we're gonna talk about. So thank you for coming on, Bård Inge, and then take it away, man.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking to you. So yeah, today I think it will be mostly about breathing because, well, that's what I use mostly because it has helped me the most. So I'm kind of a breathing nerd.
So let's start with your background, right? Give people a little bit of an insight from where you come from, and then we can build it up as to how breathing has changed your life.
Yeah, well, it started when I was around 13, 14, high levels of anxiety. Being in social settings were just painful. A lot of sweating, couldn't relax. I would say slightly paranoid behavior from myself, like always expecting the worst, always suspecting everyone having their own agenda against me. And ADHD didn't help. So I was dysregulated, to say it like that, and I was blaming the world for it, more or less. And then I got into martial art, which was really helpful to build confidence and to just get more physical exercise.
And was that Krav Maga, or was that another martial art?
Yeah, I began with Krav Maga. That was my first martial art, and I built on from there, joining Brazilian Jui-Jitsu, the mixed martial art, boxing. Tried most of them. Right now it's mostly Brazilian because that's what's available where I live, and I love it. My journey from there was, well, in my early 20s I was still struggling. I tried meditation, but yeah, I just couldn't do it in the beginning. It's impossible for me to sit still for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a difficult one for a lot of people, right? And that has to do a lot with the perceptions around meditation. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, we'll get into that as well. For me, the thing that helped me was when I started to discover breath work and stuff like this, because using breathing during meditation in the right way made it a lot easier for me to meditate. So now it's no problem to sit down for an hour to meditate. Before 5 minutes was possible. So I also noticed that in different settings, when my breathing started to become dysregulated, I become dysregulated.
Mm.
So the more I can keep it under control, the more I can be in control of myself and my own reaction and thought patterns, and it just keeps me present.
Mm.
So I can focus on what's real and not what my mind is telling me is real, which is often completely different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much how it went. And from there, it just went straight upwards, better every day,
Yeah.
and back since.
And how did you feel like the martial arts helped with that?
It helped a lot. I think everyone should do some kind of physical training, and especially things like martial art for people with ADHD, because you are forced to focus. If you don't focus, you get punched in the face, which is a good thing to remind you to focus. So, and you have all the social aspects around it, which is also helpful. And just training the body, regulating the nervous system, because in martial arts you need to be aggressive, like a sympathetic state. But you also need to be focused and in control, which is the other state. So you need to regulate back and forth between the states, so you become more skilled at self-regulation, which is always helpful. So that's the main benefit with martial arts compared to, let's say, lifting weights, where you can just go in and get angry and lift those weights and go up. So it's not so much regulating as it is in martial arts.
Yeah.
At least I feel it's like that.
Yeah, totally. And what brought you to your breathing practice?
It was actually through Krav Maga. Ayal, the chief, which you know very well, is focuses a lot on breathing and meditation. And he always, during his seminar, he's always teaching us a little bit about it. So it was from those sessions I could feel, first of all, that my breathing was shit. And I started to experiment a bit on my own, taking courses and learning more about it from there. And I saw that the more I learned, the better it became. And yeah, so it was through Krav Maga I started with this.
Yeah. And from there, like, you started learning and it evolved. Like, what was the impact that you experienced as you started the breath practice? And did you experience differences between each one of them on your states?
Yeah, at first I did this basic breathing, like the box breathing, for example. It helped during the sessions and right after the sessions. But the long-term benefits, this didn't seem to get any long-term benefits from it, like throughout the day. So I started to learn more by reading books, from everything from yoga books to scientific books about breathing. I started to dive deeper into things like the Wim Hof method. And that breathing practice is probably the one that has impacted me the most, the Wim Hof method. Because you have the cold as well, and controlling your breathing when you're in the cold is really a hard thing to do. So then you get to train yourself in how to stay calm in a stressful situation.
Exactly.
So yeah, from there I started to experiment more with the Tummo method, from which the Wim Hof method is based upon. And yeah, I just took off in that direction from there, and testing how much I can do in stressful situation with my breath.
Because there's a funny saying in like a certain communities, like, you can't namaste the bear away, right? And that's also like, that's a good example of that. Like, if you're just doing breathing drills and you don't practice these under stress, like a stress scenario, like with water like with martial arts, like with maybe even like heat exposure, or during heavy training, like carries, sled pushes, this type of stuff, that, or like on the assault bike, that puts you in a really sympathetic states, right, where you go like maybe into flight or into freeze, where you want to quit or run away, or you just kind of start losing it, right, then you don't really build these mechanics necessary to start learning on how to regulate your breath and thus your states, right, during stressful moments that aren't controlled, let's say, right? So with family, with whatever happens to you in life, right, out on the streets, emotionally, so, or just emotionally in your relationships, with the discussions in general. So that's the cold is the way I look at it anyway. It's an easy entry, right? Because you can do it in the shower. You don't need to go find a frozen fjord as we use, right?
Well, it is the best thing to do. But yeah, most of my cold exposure is in showers because it's easy access. I can just go and take a shower. So it's a good way to train it.
Yeah, totally. And then from there, as your state started, or you started getting these long-term effects, right? So what was the next step in your journey or in your process?
Well, the next step was figuring out exactly what affected what and how. And you have all these theories, and you have so many different styles, both mainly two that are, as I see it, the main, whatever you're doing, it's either breathing less or looking at the mechanics of your breathing. Most people teach one way or the other, ignoring the other side, which I find strange. There are good side or good effects from both sides, and both sides matter. So you should first of all test and see what your main issue is and work on that. And then you should also include the other side, because I would bet 99% of people struggle with their breath one way or another.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have a breathing problem like a disease, but I can guarantee that most people need to work on their breathing to improve their regulation skills.
Yeah, it's the first input, right? I mean, that's, if you don't breathe. But talk to me a little bit about when you say like, okay, you need to test both ends, right? So how would you go about testing the first one, which is breathing? What was it? Slower breathing, right? So
yeah, you have the CO2 tolerance,
right?
And a lot of people think that breathing more is good because you get more oxygen in, which is true. But the problem is that if you only have oxygen in your lungs, you will not get any of it into the cells because you need CO2. Because of the Bohr effect, you need to have enough CO2 to get the oxygen into your cells. So if you're breathing too fast, it won't happen. So you will feel you're out of breath, even though you're breathing a lot, because you have too little CO2. So you need to test it, and a simple way is breath holding. You have like the BOLT score, which is something that a lot of people use, which is taking the time after an exhale. And when you're relaxed, you breathe normally for a few minutes, and after a normal exhale, you hold your breath and see how long you can hold it before the first signal to breathe comes. So it's not about forcing it as long as you can, because then you're testing mostly your willpower. And we don't want to test that. We want to test your body's CO2 tolerance. So just sit, relax, breathe normally, and after a normal exhale, hold it and time it. If it's below 15 seconds, you're in deep shit. If it's above 20, you are in you could do some work, but you're not in any immediate crisis per se. But it should be, some people say it should be above 40. What I see is mostly if you're around 35 seconds, you're pretty much in the good zone. So I always aim for above 30 people I work with.
Yeah.
No matter if it's athletes or people struggling mentally, it's the same target. Get above 30 seconds.
And how do you get people to their 30 seconds? Or what would you recommend people to do to get there?
There are a lot of ways. You can do breath holds. The most effective way is after an exhale, because it goes faster. After an inhale, you have to wait longer. A lot more things come into part, like how you feel mentally. It can affect you a lot. Your ability to relax can affect it. After an exhale, the CO2 builds up faster compared to the oxygen you have. So exhale, hold, nose breathing when you are jogging, and breath hold while walking is the fastest way to build up these things. And if you're breathing with your mouth, then you just close it, because that's not something you want to do.
Exactly. And talk to a little bit about the testing the mechanics.
Yeah, it's also quite simple. One way is to just put one hand on your chest and one on your stomach and inhale and see what hand moves. So if your top hand goes up, like you see the shoulders rising, then your mechanics needs work, because you're using the secondary muscles to breathe. Those are there for a reason, but it's to help us breathe when we are under attack. Like in nature, we're being attacked by a lion or something, and we need the extra amount of oxygen. The problem is that most people, and this switch actually happens, they measured it, and it happens around the age of 6 to most people. Then you stop using your diaphragm and start using your secondary muscles, which can be related to a lot of things. More sitting in school, more demands, more stress, and this will send your body into this sympathetic state. And the top chest breathing is the sympathetic state breathing.
Yeah. So
you should test it and also measure below your, let's see if I can show it, if I get it, just below your ribs in front. So you want to put a measuring tape below it and measure all the way around, and measure how wide you get on an inhale and after an exhale. So if you're, and watch your shoulders, you can have some movement in the middle of your chest, expanding there, but no upward movement whatsoever. If you have, then the test failed, or you failed the test. And measure, if you have 90 centimeters on the inhale, it should be, you just move the camera one place to the left. So you should have 9 centimeters less after the exhale. Then your mechanics are good. So if you can hold your breath after an exhale comfortably for 30 seconds and have like this 9 centimeter difference, if you're 90 centimeters around your waist, then you're breathing good.
Because on a daily basis, how many breaths was it that people take?
Well, it depends. And I've seen from studies that the normal rate varies, and it seems to be going up. So some people say that the best or the right amount is around 8 minutes. Some say 10 to 12. And some say the normal breathing range is around 16 breaths a minute. So it depends, but the main problem is not the amount of breathing or breaths you take, it's how much air you're pulling in. And also, if you have bad mechanics, you will breathe more. And also, these numbers are based on what is the average, and the average is poor breathing. So these average numbers will be wrong compared to what is ideal. The ideal breath is inhale for 5.5 seconds, exhale for 5.5. But then it depends on how much air you're breathing in. If you're filling up your lungs, then you're breathing in 6-7 liters every 10 seconds, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So half a liter is what you want in those 5.5 seconds in and out. So it's more about the combined package, not just the amount of breathing you're doing in a minute. So I don't really like to count the number of breaths during a minute, because the numbers can lie a lot.
And it's easy to game.
Yeah, it is. So, but mostly people can, without problems, slow down the breathing and get benefits from just doing that. It's quite simple to start getting benefits. So if you have never done anything like this before, don't go into training 30 minutes a day, because you will quit after a week. Just slow down your breathing during the day. Close your mouth when you're walking, upstairs, jogging, and during sleep.
Yeah. So when you mention sleep, what can people do during their sleep, right? Because obviously we're not aware, right? You're sleeping, right? So what's the most accessible strategy as to using your breath to improve your sleep? Using sleep to improve your breath.
Yeah, well, this is something that people are really uncomfortable with, but the easiest thing to do is just to use something to tape your mouth shut while sleeping. It can be uncomfortable. People think that they might die during this practice, but no, you won't. But a thing to pay attention to is when you wake up. If your mouth is dry and your nose feels closed or clogged, that's a sign that you are mouth breathing. And I was a mouth breather for several years. And it actually got worse during the Wim Hof method training in the beginning, because you're doing it too much. And during that practice, you do use your mouth. But I've retrained it. So now I don't use tape when I sleep. Another thing people need to be aware of is the placement of the tongue in the mouth, and test where it is sitting when you are relaxing. It should sit behind your front teeth at the top. So if you're relaxing and it's staying down, then you need to train it to get back up by using some exercise to train it. And when this is in the place it should be, most people will breathe with their nose during sleep, as long as everything else is okay. So training it and sleeping with tape are really the two things you can do.
Yeah. So for a lot of people out there, if you don't know, right, don't run to your nearest convenience store and duct tape your mouth. There is something like sleeping tape, which is a micropore tape that you can even use with your kids. So the micropore tape means that if I wanted to breathe through my mouth, then I could, right? And there's no law against like having the vertical strip instead of the horizontal strip, if that makes you feel more comfortable, right? Because it doesn't mean that the entire mouth needs to be closed. I mean, it also, of course, depends on the person's situation, but you can start working your way in. I've used it myself. I use it with my clients, and it generally takes like a week or two or not even a week or two. Like it took me, I think, a week or something to get used to it. And then, and this is an added benefit, I feel, it becomes a sleeping primer. So when I crawl into bed and I put my tape on, I know it's time. My system knows it's time to sleep because they're so associated, right? And a lot of these things work with associations. Here in Norway, it stays light throughout almost the entire night now. So yeah, June, right? So at the end of June, it's gonna be no sun down, so no sunsets. And then I use a sleeping mask, and that's kind of the same thing. It becomes a primer alongside with the tape, because then you're telling your system, yeah, we're preparing for sleep, right? We're gonna zone out, and then it's a pretty convenient association.
Yeah, and that's true because it becomes a habit,
Mm.
and your brain remembers it, and it works as a sleep aid in that way.
Yeah.
And also, how you're taping it, it doesn't really matter. I use force tape or used, and that's because it can break if there is a problem. It will you will get your mouth open without any problem. And also, you can just see when you wake up, if the tape is off, you're breathing with your mouth. So as long as you don't duct tape around your head, there are no dangers with it. And like you said, you get these sleep tape that are specially made for this kind of exercises. So you don't need to go completely off the rails with this one. Just a small strip. That's all you need to check it. And it also becomes a habit. And if your tongue is in the right place and you have been taping for a few weeks, a lot of people don't need to tape more. Maybe once in a while if they've been stressed. I see a lot of people that are adapted to nose breathing, but then they have maybe had a stressful time and then start to mouth breathe again because the system is stressed. So if you do it for a few weeks, most people will adapt to it and will not need the tape anymore.
So with the tongue thing, how do you go about training that, right? Because I think for a lot of people, like they take just breathing and breathing mechanics for granted, but they don't generally think about their tongue position either, right? So elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, there are many techniques. Just simply pressing it and trying to get as much of the tongue pressed up to the roof of your mouth 10 times, 3 to 4 times during the day, just really trying to forcefully push it up. Try to maintain a good position and pay attention to it when you're relaxing. If it's dropping down, just lift it up. That's the way I did it. Took me, I think it was 3 to 4 weeks before it was in the place it should be. And also then my mouth breathing without the tape pretty much vanished after I trained it.
Nice.
So it's all about just pressing it up, training those muscles, because that is the natural place of the tongue. So it's not about adapting something new. It's just about reconnecting the wires and getting some muscles in there.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've been experimenting with that as well, because I noticed that I come from the same place, right? A lot of mouth breathing. And then I started also with the tongue work, and that has really helped. I just kind of did it after brushing my teeth to also have an associative mechanic, right? So that you're just like, oh, now I forgot to do it again. So I just paste it after something I do daily, and then you make a habit out of that. For people that want to look into that more, the term is mewing, Mewing. It's named after Dr. Mew, right? So I thought it was an odd name as well until I researched it, and then I was like, oh, okay, thank God it's named after a person. Because I thought it had something to do with cats the first time I heard it. Because in Dutch, like meowing, right? That's what we do with a cat. So, or that's what the cat does. So that's my first instinct was very wrong on that one. but mewing, right?
you're not
I'll
alone.
make sure it's posted in the description here. So that's the tongue stuff. So what else is there in the breathing realm that you dove into?
Oh, so much. I also want to mention with this mewing technique, it also affects the bone structure in our face because we can or grow more bones in our face even after we pass 70 years. So it helped to open up the pathways for breathing, which is why he developed this technique.
Yeah.
It was not designed for the tongue placement alone. It was to train your whole system.
So it's a natural occurrence from the tongue being in its proper position. So that's also something that it's a pretty important point that a lot of people don't know, which is that bones are tissue. It feels hard to us, but it's soft tissue still, right? Bones will bend. It's a collagen mixed with some other stuff, and it can restructure, it can repair, right? So just like this myth about people aging, like not having any brain plasticity or your brain being set, that's also not true. Your brain is constantly changing, which is why breathing can help anyone at any age and at any stage in their life. And the same for the mewing thing. Like, don't expect Henry Cavill's chin, but at least your face will start looking better and being more symmetrical as it starts filling out with bone and your jaw starts setting a little bit more. So those are at least things you can look forward to if you dive into that.
Yeah, it works. It does. And also when you mention bones, over breathing will weaken your bones. So that's another benefit from breathing less. You will get stronger bones.
Go a little bit into that breathing less, because we've talked about just like breathing in general, but why exactly breathing less, as like with the carrying of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide? So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, breathing less is a practice that many teaches, and it's simply because overbreathing is so common. Because, well, probably because people are so stressed and sitting all day, so the mechanics doesn't work, and you adapt this shallow top chest breathing, which also triggers over breathing. Breathing less is good because you increase your CO2 levels. So that's the main benefit from it. And increasing your CO2 levels will, among others, increase the amount of oxygen that you get into your muscles and cells, because you have more CO2 to help you to release oxygen into the cells. And also, if you see a person during a panic attack, you always see them breathing into a bag, right? And that is because you get CO2. CO2 has a calming effect. So if you want to calm down, breathe less, get more CO2, because it has a calming effect. So it's a really good thing to do. Also, for athletes, breathing less will affect your performance, because your body will do more with less. So training, it's kind of like, if you go deep enough with this breathing, it's kind of like high altitude training. So you affect the red blood cell count.
So for the people that don't know how that kind of works, your spleen pumps out red blood cells when it notices from its environment out that the oxygen, so the oxygen has gone down from the environment, right? And then it starts basically releasing extra red blood cells.
Yes, and that makes you go harder for a longer time.
So it's basically the EPO, right?
Yeah, it is.
Natural EPO.
It is, and it's legal. and I see a lot of people are adapting it in different sports. So but still, so many people have a lot of things to do. And I actually saw something that was pretty strange for me. A scientist, there is a soccer player, famous one, Harry Kane. You always see him walking around with his mouth open. And I saw well, I don't recall the name, but it said in the article a scientist explained why. And it was because he could breathe more and get more oxygen in during the matches. Which is like, yeah, it's not how it works. Because, yeah, you get more oxygen in, but your cells will become deprived. Which is what happens if you have done the Wim Hof breathing. You are over breathing. You're emptying your system from CO2. And you get this tingling sensation in your hands and feet, especially in the beginning, if you haven't done it more than a few times. And this is because your cells are actually lacking oxygen. It doesn't matter if you put like a measuring tool on your finger, then you just see the oxygen level in your blood. And it doesn't really matter because you can have 98, 99 on it, but it doesn't show how much is being sent out to the muscles and cells from there, which is what we really want. And it's the same if you are going out for a run and you feel like you're breathing way too little, like you're almost, it's really uncomfortable. And if you are measuring it, you will still see you have enough oxygen in your blood. And then you get more into the muscles, but it's uncomfortable because your body can't handle the CO2 levels. So it needs to be trained.
Yeah. So the key takeaway here is that for everyone, whether it's athletes or people with mental health issues, is raising the CO2 threshold. Yeah,
because you get more CO2, and CO2 has a calming effect. So especially for anxiety, it's a really simple and good thing to do, because you will increase your tolerance level for stress in a situation you are uncomfortable in, because you have this calming effect from the CO2. Some people even use like a CO2 hit in treatment, where you inhale, I don't remember how much, I think it was 25% more CO2, but I'm not sure, just for a few breaths. You provoke a strong reaction during this, because you can feel panic building up, because it's almost like someone is shoving a sock down your throat. So it's not a comfortable thing to do. But after they report being a lot more, or a lot calmer, being more relaxed, it just feels a lot better. And that's an extreme way. I don't do that. But I know that it's been being used and studied now, and it works. The results are really good from it. But you can do so much with just breathing less and have the same effect. So just CO2 into your system.
And like, seeing that he's using this with athletes and with people that are struggling mentally, right? So can you just talk a little bit about your experiences coaching these things, or using these tools?
Yeah, I do. When I start, I use the same kind of tests for both, just to measure the CO2 tolerance, their mechanics, and their breathing habits. So that's the same for both groups. But the practices will, of course, be different, not only based on their results, but also on their goals. Because if you have an athlete, you have a certain kind of goals. If you have someone that's struggling with anxiety, you might have different goals. So I will structure it based on the results and also based on the goals. and their habits and how it works into their days. So the athlete I'm working with now is mostly focusing on CO2 because his mechanics are okay and improving every week, and also because he needed a nose surgery because he had a blocked nose, so he actually needed to do the surgery there to open it up. So he has been mouth breathing for most of his life and is finally a nose breather, and well, he can tell you about the benefits. And I'm also starting to see a lot of progress, especially when it comes to the pause when he is tired. So during the last fights of tournament, for example, his mental his ability to stay clear in his mind and focus has improved compared to before, when we were just fighting and in a more or less fight state. Now he's still able to regulate because he doesn't get this panic sensation in his brain from being too tired. So he can stay focused and have a little bit more explosive power, because it's the first thing that's going when or the first thing you lose when you get tired is the explosive power, and it's because you don't get enough oxygen into your muscles and because you don't have enough CO2. So that's that's how it's going with him. I've also been working with people with high levels of anxiety, and then we always start with the mechanics because that's the thing that's usually way off to those people. And I don't like to mix up too many things because it's too overwhelming. So start with the worst thing and move from there.
Yeah, those are great tools and great tips. I mean, as you said, like everyone breathes, right? Everyone should learn how to breathe properly, both mechanically and just in their respiratory frequency. So like how many breaths you're taking in a minute. And like these guys, especially athletes, because that's like if you follow martial arts, and that's also why we reference martial arts so much, right? Because that's our background, and we both have gassed plenty of times in the past. And it really like if you're in any type of scenario, whether it's grappling or striking, but grappling has a little bit more of that that anxiety, then it's you really get close to that or you get to that point where it's so overwhelming that you're so tired and it's still so much stress input that you just need to quit. And with the grappling, especially, like if you run out of air and somebody's trying to or is on you, either pummeling you or trying to choke you, but you can still breathe, but you're so gassed, then your stress levels go through the roof.
Yeah, and you make mistakes, and you're fucked more or less. So your ability to stay focused, stay clear in those situations could be the difference between winning or losing the match. So especially at a high level, when people are really, all of the competitors are really good. So the skill level is kind of the same maybe, but the person that can stay calm during the last minutes are usually the one who will end up winning.
Yeah, totally. So, and that's why you see, like, it was Alistair Overeem worked with Wim Hof. There's a lot of fighters working with Patrick McKeown from the Oxygen Advantage, right? The Norwegian top Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys have Bård Inge. So they have you, right? So that that's gonna give them an edge. And it's quite awesome to see, because we just started with our breathing practices, for our own challenges that we were having mentally and socially, and then like it started paying off in our sport. And that's also a very interesting thing to see now, like how a widespread breathing has become, right? So it's nice, it's getting to the people as it should.
It should have been included in school from a young age, I think, how to breathe, because it affects our lives, both our mentally and physical health, so much. Because the breathing in the wrong way keeps you in a sympathetic state, which makes it really hard for your body to repair and digest, for example. Sleep. It just ruins so much, and it's so easy to do something about it.
Is that also then why you decided to, or you're working on it, but to create like a coaching service, right, on the side now? You're making something. What's that about?
Well, it's about mostly breathing, of course, since it's my biggest passion. But also I include some other things in there. I'm working on also thinking about writing a book about it. I've done some of the writing just to get more knowledge to the people, because I see so many people, both athletes and people that struggle with their mental health, that has a really bad breathing habit. And I'm not saying that breathing is the key to curing everything. Of course not. But if your breathing is off, then everything will be off no matter what. So start by the thing that we need the most, which is breathing. We can't go long without it. It's a few minutes, then you're gone. So this is what we should start with. Just fix the breathing first and take it from there. And also during meditation, the breathing is what you focus on to keep present. So just by putting attention to your breathing, you become more present. And most of our problems is not in the present moment. It's usually the past or the future. So it keeps you centered in the present moment. So it's used as a mental exercise as well. You need to breathe for everything.
Yeah, totally. And that's also something that like aligns with my experience. Like the moment I started meditating well is really the moment I started focusing on my breath instead of, right? So the general paradigm in meditation is, oh yeah, it's just about not thinking. But if you think about not thinking, you're thinking, right? Like how is that gonna work? If I say to you, don't think about the pink elephant, what are you gonna think about? You're gonna think about the thing I told you not to think about. Instead, like, it's shifting the focus into something in the body. And for me, breathing was that focus. You can also use your heartbeat. That works for a lot of people as well. And for me, these two things kind of like mix together. Like I'll go into breathing, then I'll notice my heart rate, and then I can stay with my heart rate and then go back to breathing, right? Whichever way works for the individual. But it's really such an anchoring exercise or tool, right? I mean, you just go focus on your breath for X amount of minutes, and then you don't really think about time passing, right? I use a timer, but just because I don't want to like zone out and wake up zone back in an hour later, because you're kind of in that zone between waking and sleeping if you're deep enough. Even though you might not experience that straight away, it's a really nice spot to be in. But in any case, like a lot of this other stuff in meditation is that there's like, even though like the deep benefit will come from around 20 minutes, if I can change state through breathing, then in my meditative practice, even if that's 2 minutes, I have already made a neurological change and a chemical change, right? My brain has already changed something in accordance to what has happened to me in those 2 minutes. And so that's why, like, if you project yourself to 20 minutes, like Bård said with the breathing thing, don't start with a high threshold. Maybe you can do 2 minutes, maybe you can do 3 minutes, and it will already pay off. There's already a benefit just there, even if it's just changing the state. Because if you do that little by little, the neurology, so the actual volume, right? So gray matter volume and how certain parts of your brain is shaped or are shaped, they will start changing in accordance to you changing, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And you're building habits. Also with meditation, for most people, setting aside 20 minutes, well, most people do have time for it, but it's a long time to set aside. But you don't need 20 minutes to get benefits, like you said. And if you use your breathing while walking, for example, that walking can become a meditation. You have walking meditations. Just use whatever situation you can. Just pay attention to your breathing for a few minutes, and you have kind of established a meditation routine.
Yeah,
it's really that simple. You don't need to go.
That's very present in Zen Buddhism, right? Where they say, like, whatever you're doing, be present when you're doing it. And they have like the raking of stones. So it could be anything you're doing it could be or can be, and maybe will be eventually, a meditative practice, as long as you're present and focusing on your breath.
Washing your dishes can be meditation.
Yeah.
As long as you're present, that's what it's all about. It's not about not thinking. The thoughts, they can be there, just don't get attached to them. That's pretty much the basic meditation. Accept whatever pops up, don't follow it.
Yeah.
And it's just daily life. If emotions pop up, it's not wrong to get emotions. You shouldn't block them or ignore them. You accept them, but you don't get attached to them. But that's pretty much the practice of meditation. Not attachment, not complete silence, no thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like experienced meditators, right? Things will change, but for people starting off, it really doesn't matter that you're thinking or not thinking, right? It's just a matter of coming back to the present, back to the breathing, back to being aware and conscious of your breathing and where you are, right? So you can also use the other senses to help ground you in the present, right? Something that you've talked about before as well, where it's like you're just using a sense meditation, if you will, right? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I tasting?
That's a good practice. Just pay attention to whatever is around you at that moment, which is something we all should do more.
Yeah. So that's the thing, like a lot of the society is now, right, fast-paced, things are evolving at a higher rate. A lot of the slowness is out of our lives, right? Especially if you live in a busy city. And getting this slowness back is a matter of creating a practice in your daily life to slow everything down inside of you, right? Your breathing, and then the mind will follow.
Yeah. This fast-paced world is messing with the brain. All this multitasking is it's not multitasking, it's the brain switching from one job to another really fast, and it's actually ruining our ability to focus and stay present. So we are not good at multitasking. We can't really multitask. We just switch between two different tasks really fast. And it feels like multitasking, but it's not what it is. It's ruining of our focus. That's pretty much what's happening in multitasking.
Yeah, totally. And that's the other thing, like when you learn how to breathe and subsequently how to meditate, your ability to focus then will also start increasing, because that's what you see with the more experienced meditators, and something that we've experienced. Not just flow, but just your ability to focus on that single task and stay with it, right? That expands, and that's what I noticed as well with my meditation and my breath practice, is that my ability to be focused also changes, not from just focusing from on a single thing necessarily, but not being distracted by sensations that I'm feeling as I'm meditating or thoughts coming and going, right? So that it completely changes your ability to be non-reactive to the internal and external environment.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. This non-reaction. But, if we can avoid reacting, life becomes a lot easier. So that's pretty much what it's all about.
Yeah,
the meditation, like this, non-reacting.
And that's also a pretty simple one, that if you start building your time up, is that there's going to be moments where you're inclined and tempted to like look at your timer, and that's already like a distraction. So if you can push through that, it's like basically doing a mental bicep curl. Like, okay, I didn't look, right, and I maybe you feel it again. Oh, I didn't look again, and I stay with it until my time is up, and then you grow stronger from that because you're training your ability not to be distracted, right? Your ability to be focused and to resist these temptations, and that's in essence not being reactionatory.
Yeah, that's true. And also during long meditations, you can get these like this special a lot of colors and stuff like that. Like call it spiritually highs, which become really fun for people to try to get. But the benefits are coming from what you are mentioning now. It's not from those. Those can be fun, like with Wim Hof breathing as well, or other types of heavy breathing. You can get these colors and stuff, and it's fun, but it's not where the benefits are. It's from the basic stuff. So don't go chasing after those. It's fun, but in a sense, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything else you want to share? Because I think we ran through the largest brunt of hits.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I have anything more to add, really.
No? All right.
Not that I can think of.
Where can people find you, bro? If they want to connect about coaching for breathing or anything else, or want updates on the book and the following coaching services you'll be supplying, where can they find you?
Right now, I could be found on Facebook and on mail. There will be a website up shortly. But for now, it's Facebook and mail.
Okay. I will link them here in the description anyway, right? So then people can connect with you when they're interested.
Sounds good.
All right, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and then getting to pick your mind a little bit and getting your experience. And I hope that everyone watching, right, they enjoyed this, the information, and will pick it up and do something with it.
I hope so. I hope people start breathing less and breathing correctly. As always a pleasure to be on here talking with you.
Thanks, bro.
Always enjoy it. Always.
I appreciate it. All right. Have a good day, man. Talk to you later.
You too.